Everyone, Maurice and welcome to Takes Invest. We'll talk about investing, finance, and professional development. For today's video, 10 minutes only. The investment we're going to talk about today would be Bitcoin, ticker BTC. First, I just want to say happy Monday, everybody. Hope everyone had a great weekend. I personally did. And respect to earlier this morning, as I woke up around like 7:30ish a.m. on the East Coast, I see that Bitcoin is currently up about like 4.7%, right, trading around like the $40,850 level. Right, and the main catalyst on driving this pump is really coming from the news, right? The media affectation that we got directly from Elon Musk again, another Elon Musk saga, with respect to his foreshadow, all right, or his initiative to potentially accept Bitcoin as a form of payment again, right? But with a great contingency, right, correlating with his green energy initiative, right, the renewable energy source initiative, that he wants Bitcoin to use 50%, right, as a source of renewable energy to mine those respective source of Bitcoin. So I'm gonna go through a technical analysis to see how substantive is this news media affectation reflecting into the technical analysis, right? And I'm gonna give you guys my level of resistance to look out for, knowing the fact that we up, not substantially, but relatively speaking, not a pretty sizable, right? Up about close to 5%, up about like $1,860, and my price target for you in 2021 as well. So stay tuned, stick around, and let's make some money. So moving on to the technical analysis for Bitcoin ticker BTC. So just to like a recap on the weekly perspective real quick. So let's look at June 7th, basically a week ago. You can see that we had this like a relatively red candle right here at that time. And this is basically anti-correlations with the equity market that we've had on that day, right? On that specific day, across the equity market, majorly driven by a lot of the growth stocks, were up on that day, right? And the reason for that is because of the anticipation that the CPI report that was going to be coming out in the next 3 days on the Thursday on June 10th was going to be a relatively positive one in comparison to the negative ones that we've been having consecutively in the past, right? Anticipating that the economy is coming back, anticipating that the outlook for the economy is going to slowly propel going forward, which subsequently drove this like red candle as a form of like anti correlations and also as a form of safe haven at the same time, right? And with respect to that, after that specific Monday, we had a relatively green pump on the subsequent day, basically replenish what we were depleting the day before, basically. And this was mainly driven by a lot of the negative media affectations around inflation, right? And this was a relatively a manipulative one coming from the media, and I would say is a relatively apparent media application as a form of influencing gullible investors into selling on the equity portion and chasing the crypto side, is that the emphasis on inflation, the way they are portraying it, it just the way they are writing is a little bit more sudden or prompt than it's supposed to be, right? Logically speaking, right? If you knew about macroeconomics, if you know about like business fundamentals, you know that the inflation has been percolating for the 1.5 years so far, right? Ever since the March that we have had, right? With that, the whole country shutdown that we've had, right? Like, how do you expect that we're able to get the quantitative easing, right? Basically, the Federal Reserve printing money, which is the term quantitative easing, right? To quantitatively ease the economy, right? So we can sustain our corporation's operation, right? While at the same time sustain our stimulus check, right? Our stimulus check is not money just get thrown into the air and or like they just appear out of nowhere that the government's so nice to us. They're basically printing more and more money from their printing machines in the Federal Reserve in the same correlations to devalue our currency as a whole, right? So we've been basically just devaluating or depreciating our US dollars for the 1.5 years so far. And with respect to that, you call this inflation, it's all happening all of a sudden. We've been doing it for the 1.5 years so far already. So this is nothing sudden. So for us to have this like green candle right here, that tells me a lot about like just the lack of understanding across a lot of public investors. But while at the same time, because of the fact that a lot of large institutional investors understand the lack of understanding among short-term investors or amateur investors, if you may, in this pool, that they subsequently chase this pump, knowing the fact that it correlates with the dip that we had on the previous days, right? And that subsequently drove up. And as we got the CPI report that came out, right, because of the fact that CPI report came out, despite all the negative media affectations around the emphasis on the inflations, the numbers came out relatively good, right? Despite, higher price point, that is justified, for the inflations because the US dollar is depreciating, they need, companies just need to charge the price point a little bit higher to offset their operation margin and the profit margin, while at the same time, it hasn't really, create any detriment or a lack of demand for the cost of goods, right? So in that respect, it came out to be net positive. That the report came out to be a positive outlook for the economy, which foreshadows that the economy is slowly coming back up. So for the first time, despite the 3 consecutive negative CPI report that we got so far, this fourth one actually came out to be a positive one, right? Which subsequently drove some negative pressure for the safe haven investment vehicle, aka cryptocurrency, which subsequently drove this off, right? So as of today, you could see that, or later yesterday night, you could see that we had this like mega green candle starting from the $34,000, $788, all the way up to the almost $39,000, right? 38,944. And then as we woke up early this morning, we were pumping up and away all the way to the $41,000 level, right? And we kind of slowly fluffing off from there. And the reason we are selling off from this level is because of the fact that we never really had any substantive psychological resistance level we've had here, right? Despite breaking this $40,000 level, like we have this one time of consolidation, but I wouldn't call this a consolidation. We have like basically 1-2 times consolidation here, right? But this was like a more of a bearish downsell consolidation rather than an actual upswing consolidation. So I kind of like those like kind of net cancels each other out. And also on top of that, like let's look at further back historically, right? You can see that we kind of crossed from there, but there was no consolidation level that would form historically. So I would say, with respect to this pump that we're currently experiencing today, it's logical why we're selling off from the $41,000 level despite breaking through the psychological resistance level, right? The flat number, the $40,000 level, right? And I think the level of sustainability for this level will be relatively short. So I do foresee some selling pressure coming forward, right? And the reason I also want to evidentially support why I'm saying this is because the news that we got with respect to the depictions around Elon Musk potentially accepting Bitcoin for their payment options going forward, contingent on 50% renewable energy source, is something that is questionable, right? Knowing the fact that, as a basis of cryptocurrency is decentralized, right? There is a lack of routing, there is a lack of, compliance with respect to like where is this coming from, right? So now you need to go through the regulatory compliance in respect to identify the source of these renewable sources. Like, is it coming from the petroleum chemical plants, as a source of power versus using wind energy power or using solar power to propel the sustainment of this creations of mining of this Bitcoin. Like, I mean, just ask yourself, right? Like, we're living in our living room right now. We're in your bedroom, right? How likely are you going to be able to identify the electricity source that you're using right now, right? Is it coming from solar energy? Is it coming from wind energy? Is it coming from the turbine? Where is it coming from? We don't know, right? Like, and for us to do that for something that is fundamentally decentralized, that's a very counterintuitive type of conception. I think there's a lack of substance in this like news depiction on Elon Musk potentially accepting Bitcoin as a form of payment. I think he's going to accept Bitcoin as a form of payment regardless in the future as this technology further evolves over time. How substantive is this in like a short-term perspective on sustaining the level that we're at right now? Based on the technical analysis, I would say is very, very low. I would give this like a maybe 5% of sustainability going forward for us to stay at these levels right now, right? And also on top of the fact, you could see that the MACD and the RSI, you could see that MACD is highly overcrossed right now, right? So this is bound to cross back down. So we're gonna expect more selling pressure going back down to I would say the first level resistance would be somewhere around like the $38,000, right? And then possibly even going down to the 37,500, which is a more consolidated substantive level that we'll go back to test to, right? And also on top of the fact, you can see the RSI is highly overbought at the moment. So I don't advise buying Bitcoin today. I think, if you are holding some Bitcoin in more of a short term perspective, you have like a short term day trader type of mentality. I think today might be a good time for us to take some profit. To be honest with you, because of the fact how lack of substance is this catalyst that we're seeing, and how the technical analysis is telling you that whole story of that, just the lack of substance that we're seeing from this catalyst, and the quantitative analysis perspective as well, and the supply and demand dynamics. Right, people are not sustaining these levels, substantively, and if you're buying today and try to chase the pump, you might be holding the bag in the short term perspective. But long term wise, I think Bitcoin's gonna keep growing from there as we further adopt, and knowing the fact that Bitcoin is a scarce form of commodity, right? So we're gonna slowly deplete and we're gonna eventually run to a certain limit that the price point is gonna go up from here, right? I wouldn't buy in today if I was you. Like I personally wouldn't, because I'm just a lot more risk averse than some other people. But if you buy in today and you want to chase the pump, like go ahead. But I don't advise it based on just how the technical analysis set up. I think there's a cheaper and lower risk price point that you could get to. But long term wise, if you buy in today, you probably 2-3x your money from here going forward as we learn more about the corporate adoptions utilizations going forward. But yeah, definitely bearish at the moment, and the Elon's news was definitely not substantive, and the chart is telling you the whole story. We're just talking about the technical analysis with respect to Bitcoin ticker BTC. Based on the technical analysis and the substantiveness of the article that we just got, from Elon Musk on, just how substantive is this article and the affectation, right? I would give that, the substantiveness of both the technical and the article as a catalyst to be relatively on the lower spectrum, right? So I don't advise buying it today at the level of like $40,500. I think the like of like going back down to the the mid $35,000 level is more likely, right? And for me, I would, if you were like a short term investor, I think taking some profit today would be relatively smart. But if you're a long term investor, like why not? If you want to buy in today and hold for the next 5 to 10 years, like you'll be laughing at these numbers in the future, right? But to each his own, right? Me, I'm more risk averse. I'm more I like to buy things on a discount. I don't like to buy things on a macro pump and dump type of catalyst, right? I like to buy things that are more substantive rather than just like more high up in the air type of fluff, right? And I think the $34,500 would be the substantive level that I would look out for when we go back down. I know that we will go back down to these levels again, right? And you might ask, like, are we gonna go down to like the $30,000 or $24,000? I would say in this week will be highly unlikely, knowing the fact that that will completely destroy the logics of the MACD and RSI in the supply and demand dynamics. And with respect to my corporate adoption percentage forecast, I give it's like a 10% corporate adoptions, right? I think currently we are about like 3.2% of corporate adoptions at the moment, trading around like the 40,500. So for us to get to like 10% in the next 12 months, right? Knowing the fact that we grew to like I think 60,000 at the 5% corporate adoption rates within like a couple of weeks, right? So for us to get to 10%, as we are shifting to more of a sector rotations, and as we're shifting more of a macro adoptions going forward, to get to the above $100,000 level in the next 12 months, generating close to like a 4 times X of your money, wouldn't be surprising to me. I think that's highly logical. And frankly to you, I'm being highly conservative based on my technical model that I have built based on the corporate adoptions, right? Because this is discounting retail investors as well and the major big whales as well, right? I'm only talking about corporate investors like Teslas, if you may, right? So highly likely, still very optimistic, very bullish on this asset as a whole. All right, so that's it for today with respect to my technical analysis on Bitcoin, ticker BTC. Hopefully you guys find my insights and my technical analysis helpful into formulating your executions of your trades going forward. Please kind of hit the like button, subscribe button, also that bell notification, and watch out for the next video.